He shared his last breath to save the alien warrior, but what she did next changed everything. The sky above was turbulent with shades of crimson and green, illuminated by a wan sun that glowed faintly behind swirling clouds. Captain Orion Kane, a veteran of countless starfaring ventures, squinted as he peered through the failing windshield of the starship Ardent Dawn. Alarms blared in urgent pulses, chiming a dire warning that resonated through every bulkhead. Sparks danced across the control console, filling the cockpit with a haze of acrid smoke. Orion coughed, trying to steady his trembling hands on the flight stick. He knew there was little time to correct the ship's descent. Gravimetric thrusters had failed, and the navigation system was scrambled beyond recognition. Through labored breaths, he muttered a silent prayer. He had been traveling through an uncharted sector of the galaxy, drawn by rumors of a lost resource that might revolutionize interstellar travel. The planet below, covered in thick jungle canopies and treacherous swamps, was not even on standard star maps. The only clue to its existence was a half-corrupted signal gleaned from an ancient data archive. Now, he found himself trapped in the fatal embrace of its gravitational pull, with minimal control over his battered ship. The console screeched as it spat sparks into the air, and the inertial dampeners faltered with each passing moment. The planet's toxic atmosphere threatened everything, but he had little choice. If he did not land, he would burn up. If he landed incorrectly, the impact would kill him outright. Yet, he refused to lose hope. Gritting his teeth, Orion yanked the throttle, redirecting emergency power to the forward stabilizers. The Ardent Dawn shrieked in protest, metal frames twisting. Outside the craft, the ground rushed up with merciless speed, an endless expanse of dark jungle waiting to crush the ship. Orion's knuckles whitened around the controls. He adjusted the angle of descent by the slightest fraction, hoping that it would be enough to turn a catastrophic crash into a survivable one. Finally, with a deafening roar, the Ardent Dawn hit the jungle canopy. Branches as thick as starship hull plating snapped, vines tore away from treetops, and the shriek of tortured metal filled the cockpit. Orion felt his bones rattle, the cabin swirling in a kaleidoscope of sparks, smoke, and darkness. Then came the jolt as the ship skidded violently along the ground, tearing up a deep scar in the soil. The harness pinned him in place, nearly crushing his ribs, until the craft shuddered to a final, grinding halt. For a moment, he heard nothing but ringing in his ears, the wail of an emergency klaxon echoing through the crumpled corridors of the dawn. He tested his limbs, relieved to find them unbroken. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead, and his breathing came in ragged gasps. The ship's life support system had also taken a punishing blow. With the planet's atmosphere unknown, he had to rely on a dwindling supply of emergency oxygen from his flight suit. "Computer," he rasped, pressing a flickering button, "shut down all non-essential systems. Route life support to my suit module. Analyze external atmosphere." The battered console sputtered, the screen cracked from the impact. In a distorted voice, the computer gave him the dreaded news. The planet's air was tainted with toxins unbreathable by humans. Without the suit's filter, he would not last more than a few minutes outside. He took a measured breath, ignoring the searing pain in his side. He fumbled beneath the seat, retrieving a battered helmet with a built-in filtration mask. The visor was scratched, but it would have to do. As the final lights in the cockpit began to flicker, Orion realized there was no time to linger. He had to evacuate the ship before the reactor overheated or the entire craft collapsed. Grabbing a small survival pack, he made his way out, struggling against jammed doors and hanging wires that sparked in protest. When at last he emerged onto the surface of that unknown world, the first thing he noticed was the overwhelming thickness of the air. Even with the suit's filters, it smelled pungent, ripe with decay and alien spores. The jungle that surrounded him was immense. Towering trees with sinewy, twisting trunks soared into the sky, draped with luminescent vines that flickered like bioluminescent lizards. The ground squelched with every step, a mixture of rotting vegetation and half-flooded puddles. In the distance, thunder rumbled, though the color of the lightning was a faint cobalt blue. Orion took a shaky step forward, scanning the area for any sign of danger or salvation. He coughed into his helmet, the echoes of the crash reverberating in the quiet gloom. Under normal circumstances, he might have marveled at such an alien vista, but fear and pain gnawed at him. The slightest tear in his suit could spell a slow, suffocating end. Frantic as he felt, he forced himself to remain methodical. He needed shelter, a vantage point, and some means of signaling for help, if help was even possible. He pressed a hand to his ribs, wincing. With every strained breath, he felt a stabbing pain. It might have been a fracture or a deep bruise. Either way, continuing onward required all his will. Yet something moved at the corner of his vision, a fleeting silhouette among the twisted trunks. He froze, stifling a gasp of alarm. His heart raced as he glimpsed a shape that disappeared behind vine-choked vegetation. Though he wanted to call out, caution held him back. For all he knew, the native creatures might be hostile. The planet was uncharted, its ecosystem a mystery. Still, the shape had looked humanoid, tall, slender, tinted with a faintly blue hue. Had he imagined it? Perhaps a trick of the light? He did not have to wonder long. Within moments, he realized he was surrounded. Figures began to appear on all sides, emerging from behind gargantuan leaves and thick, gnarled roots. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, their skin a cerulean blue that seemed to shimmer beneath the scattered sunlight. Each figure wore a simple harness braided from plant fibers, adorned with strange metallic ornaments that looked suspiciously advanced. Their bodies were honed and athletic, arms and legs covered with swirling tattoos in silver ink. They stared down at him with eyes that glowed faintly, a luminous gold that betrayed both intelligence and wariness. Orion reached for his sidearm, but he hesitated. He was outnumbered and likely outmatched. One of the aliens stepped forward, a female whose posture radiated authority. She carried a long, curved blade with intricate etchings along its surface. Her expression was not overtly hostile, but it was certainly guarded, as though she were prepared for any sudden move. Her gaze flicked from Orion's helmet to the twisted wreck of the ardent dawn, her features creased with curiosity. He slowly raised his hands, hoping to communicate peaceful intent. "I mean you no harm," he managed, though his voice quavered from lack of air and the throbbing in his side. The alien woman responded in a language unfamiliar to him, the sounds melodic yet sharp, reminiscent of rustling leaves and echoing wind. Orion wondered if his universal translator in the suit was still functional. It was in a battered state, but perhaps it might pick up the language. He tapped the control on his wrist, hoping to coax it into scanning the alien's speech. Before the translator could do its work, the group stiffened. Their eyes focused on something behind Orion. He turned, just in time to see the prow of the ardent dawn erupt in flame. Something had triggered a secondary ignition. The ground shook, forcing the aliens to step back in alarm. In that moment, Orion realized they might associate him with the threat of this destructive fireball. He waved his arms in desperation, shouting through his suit's speaker, "It's not safe. The ship might." But the next explosion drowned out his words. One of the aliens, a muscular male, dashed forward to shield the female who seemed to be their leader. She stumbled, losing her balance for an instant, and Orion saw something glint overhead, a large piece of metal debris flung upward by the blast. It tumbled down, spinning like a deadly blade. Without thinking, Orion lunged forward. Every instinct told him to duck and save himself, but a deeper impulse demanded that he protect the alien leader. If she died, any hope of peace or rescue might die with her. He collided with her, shoving her aside, just as the debris slammed into his back. Pain erupted across his shoulders, and he collapsed, struggling to keep his arms around her in some form of shield. The suit's integrity alarm blared, alerting him to cracks forming in his helmet seal. Poisonous air hissed in, and he felt his vision swim. He gasped, eyes wide with terror, trying to fight back the darkness that encroached. As a reflex, he tore at the suit's emergency patch kit on his belt, but his arms felt numb. The alien woman, her eyes blazing with sudden concern, grabbed hold of him. She barked orders to her warriors, who rushed forward. Orion's helmet flickered with red warning lights. The toxins stung his nose and mouth, and each breath became a struggle. He felt the edges of consciousness begin to slip away. Dimly, he saw the alien leader cradle his head, her facial markings twisting in what looked like anguish. She touched his chest, then drew back her hand as though struck by lightning. He tried to smile, though he did not know why. Perhaps he wanted to reassure her. Or perhaps he just wanted the pain to end. In that moment, an idea, a memory of one of the Star Academy's survival lessons, ignited in his fading mind. Some species were capable of sharing breath or oxygen through direct contact, a phenomenon rarely documented but possible in certain xenobiological contexts. He did not know if it would work here, but he had no other option. With the last scrap of lucidity, he clawed at the release latch on his own cracked visor. The alien's eyes widened, and she spoke rapidly to him, but he could not decipher her words. In a frantic gesture, he guided her face to his. The parted edges of his visor allowed a feeble exchange of air as he exhaled. One last breath, laced with the diminishing supply of oxygen from the suit. The world around him faded. He saw the alien woman's startled expression, her lips parted against his, as though seeking the essence of that breath. Then came the quiet hush of oblivion, enveloping him in darkness. When Orion awoke, the first thing he felt was the texture of woven fabric beneath his hands. His helmet was gone, replaced by a strange warmth against his face. Dazed, he blinked, trying to focus his eyes. He was lying in a circular chamber of some sort, its walls made from interlaced roots and vines that formed an almost cathedral-like ceiling. Bioluminescent orbs hung overhead, casting a gentle glow across the space. A dull ache still throbbed in his ribs, and his lungs burned with every breath. Yet, to his surprise, the air was not killing him. He lifted his head and saw that a large portion of the chamber's wall was open to the forest beyond, shielded by thick vines woven in elaborate patterns. The air smelled faintly sweet, and though he sensed an underlying sharpness to it, his respiratory distress was less severe than expected. He sat up, wincing at the motion. What had happened? A familiar figure approached, a tall, blue-skinned woman with golden eyes. The alien leader he had saved. She wore a band of braided reeds across her chest and carried a small vessel made from some organic material. Her gaze lingered on him in a mix of curiosity and gratitude. Orion tried to speak, but his throat felt raw, and he coughed painfully. A wave of nausea threatened to overwhelm him. She knelt beside him, placing a hand against his sternum. The contact was electric, quite literally. He felt a faint tingling, as though a mild current ran through her palm. Her eyes fluttered closed, and for a moment, his lungs expanded more easily. Something in the air around him changed, a subtle shift, as though the invisible toxins were being gently coaxed away. Finally, she spoke in halting syllables. Stay still. Must rest. The words were heavily accented, but understandable. Orion's heart nearly leapt with relief. You gave me breath, she continued, struggling to form the words. I share with you. My name is Veyla. She pressed the small vessel to his lips. Unsure of its contents, Orion hesitated, but a combination of thirst, trust, and desperation won out. He took a tentative sip, discovering that it contained a slightly bitter liquid that nonetheless soothed his parched throat. A wave of warmth radiated through his body, as though it was healing him from within. Where am I? He managed to rasp, wanting to confirm his guess. The translator in his suit was nowhere to be seen, but Veyla seemed able to speak the basics of his language. Perhaps she had gleaned it from him, or from rummaging through his gear. Perhaps it was her kind's telepathic or empathic ability. He could not be sure. She answered slowly, choosing each word with care. You are in our village. We are the Shydine people. We found you dying. Your breath saved me from the metal that fell from the sky. My warriors carried you here. Our seers used healing rites. Now you breathe our air, but not fully. We help you. He recalled the final moments before he blacked out, how he had forced a lungful of oxygen into her as the toxins overwhelmed him. He had expected to die, or at least lapse into a coma. Yet here he was, alive, and breathing in this environment, though with difficulty. Thank you, he whispered, meeting her gaze. He recognized the intelligence in her eyes, as well as an undercurrent of something else, respect, perhaps gratitude, laced with curiosity. She gave a slight nod, raising her hand in a gesture that seemed part salutation, part blessing. Slowly, she helped him to his feet. He swayed unsteadily, noticing for the first time that his battered flight suit was partially removed, replaced by a band of fabric around his torso. Someone had tended his wounds and bound his ribs. Where the jagged tear in the suit's chest plate used to be, there was now a delicate arrangement of leaves and some shimmering powder. Some sort of alien remedy. Outside the chamber, the village stretched in a graceful arc around an ancient tree that soared hundreds of feet high. The huts and structures were grown, rather than built, from living vines and roots. Balconies of woven branches formed walkways connecting one elevated platform to another. In the center, a massive, luminescent orb flickered amid the dark canopy, bathing everything in a dusky glow. Veyla guided him carefully, supporting his weight with one arm. She pointed to the orb, the heart of the great tree. It gives energy and life. We call her Ihira. She is sacred to us. Orion listened, marveling at the synergy of nature and technology around him. He noticed that many of the Shaidyne carried what appeared to be advanced weaponry, though crafted in a style that harmonized with the organic architecture. He saw metallic inlays on living bark, glowing veins running through the walkways as if the entire village was connected to a pulsing power source. The effect was eerily beautiful. They passed several curious onlookers, all tall, lithe, with the same radiant eyes. A hush followed them, whispers in that melodious language swirling around him. He caught the phrase, "He shares breath," repeated with solemn reverence. Confused, he glanced at Veyla, who pressed her lips together. "You did something we believed only possible among the Shaidyne," she explained quietly. "Sharing breath is an act of unity, a sacred bond between warriors. You gave me your breath, and I survived. Now, we share more than oxygen. We share fate." Orion's mind reeled at the implications. He had only been trying to save her life, but it seemed he had inadvertently sealed some sort of ancient ritual. The rest of the day became a blur of ceremonies and introductions. Shaidyne elders, adorned with intricate metal and shell headdresses, gathered around him, chanting softly while sprinkling shimmering dust in the air. Orion felt waves of calming energy roll through him, as though the very planet was trying to speak with him or perhaps embrace him. His attempts to explain his situation, how he had crash-landed, how he needed a way to signal his people, were met with patient nods. Veyla tried to translate his words, but the elders seemed more concerned with the significance of the breath-sharing than his request for a rescue beacon. At last, one of the elders, with skin of a deeper cobalt hue and eyes glowing like twin suns, placed a slender metal circlet upon Orion's head. It was an uncomfortably tight fit. A faint hum vibrated against his temples, and he felt a strange wave of vertigo. The elder chanted, pressing a three-fingered hand to Orion's chest. Veyla leaned in, her voice gently guiding. "They seek the shape of your soul. They want to see if you are the one from the prophecy, the sky-dweller who shares breath with our tribe. Let them in, Orion Kane." Her accent caressed his name, turning it into a musical phrase. Unease gnawed at him, but curiosity won. He relaxed, letting the hum of the circlet fill his mind. Images flickered across his vision, swirling galaxies, swirling star clusters, the memory of Earth, the Academy, all the battles and journeys he had endured. Each memory unfolded like a petal under the eyes of the Shaidyne elder. Then, a flash of something else, a giant mechanical shape, crowned by swirling darkness, standing in a wasteland of twisted vines. A monstrous creation of metal fused with something organic, eyes blazing with unholy light. It roared with a sound that resonated in Orion's bones. Then, the vision shattered, leaving him gasping for breath. The elder stepped back, visibly shaken. "The shadow of Malachar," he pronounced in his native tongue, though Orion's battered translator, or perhaps some new telepathic link, allowed him to understand. He sees it too. The ancient threat awakens. Murmurs spread among the gathered Shaidyne. Orion looked around, bewildered. Veyla exhaled, her brow furrowing with worry. Malachar was a being of metal and decay that plagued our ancestors, a war engine left behind by travelers from beyond the stars, or so the legends say. If it has awakened, our world is in grave danger. Orion absorbed this in silence, recalling the rumor that had brought him to this system. Something about an advanced resource, a technology lost to time, rumored to exist on an unnamed planet. Could the monstrous machine be tied to that advanced power source? He felt a pang of guilt at the notion that his intrusion, or the crash of his ship, might have triggered an ancient catastrophe. "I want to help," he said softly, meeting Veyla's gaze. But I still need to find a way off this planet. Or at least send a distress call. There might be more trouble on the horizon. Veyla nodded gravely. Our destiny is joined. To face Malachar alone would be madness. The prophecy says that when the sky tears and a stranger shares breath with a warrior of the Shidine, the final seal is broken. The monster can be defeated, but only by unity between worlds. Perhaps that is you, Orion Kane. He swallowed hard, feeling both fear and a strange hope. Perhaps, in saving her life, he had become part of something far greater. If the prophecy was correct, his presence might be the key to vanquishing the threat. And if Malachar truly was some leftover war engine, there could be advanced technology on this planet that might also help him repair his beacon or even the Ardent Dawn, assuming it was salvageable. That night, the Shidine elders held a council around a towering bonfire. The flames cast dancing shadows across the canopy, and the swirling patterns of light made Orion dizzy. Veyla stood beside him, translating the elders' proclamations in hushed tones. They spoke of star devourers, ancient guardians, and times when the planet was not as it appeared now. They believed that once, their people lived among the stars, carrying the seeds of their great tree across galaxies. But a great calamity had driven them to settle on this jungle world, burying secrets beneath the ground. One elder, with eyes that glimmered like moonlit lakes, stared at Orion with intense scrutiny. You carry within you a spark that resonates with Ihira, he said. We sense it in your shared breath with our war leader. This bond opens a path to the deeper layers, where Malachar's husk was sealed. Our ancestors wrote that only a union of alien breath and Shidine spirit could break the final barrier. Veyla confirmed his words in simpler terms. You and I can pass through wards left by our forerunners. We must go there, Orion. We must see if Malachar truly stirs. Though the notion of confronting an ancient war machine made Orion's heart pound, he recognized that he could not refuse. First, he owed a great debt to these people for saving his life. Second, if Malachar's reemergence threatened not only this planet but also the wider galaxy, it was his duty as a star pilot to act. He had fought lesser terrors before. Perhaps the experience would count for something. Rising from the circle, Orion approached the elders with as much composure as he could muster. Despite his injuries, he kept his spine straight, shoulders back. I will join you, he said, but I need help. My ship was destroyed. I have no gear, no weapons except for a sidearm. If we are to face this threat, I need a chance to modify or repair some equipment. Maybe we can salvage something from the wreckage. The elders exchanged looks, then nodded. In the morning, we travel as one to the crash site, one elder announced. We shall gather what remains. May the great tree guide us. That night, Orion could barely sleep. The bed of woven vines, though surprisingly comfortable, did little to soothe his swirling thoughts. Every breath was still an effort, as though the air refused to fully accommodate his human lungs. A special device sat beside him, a shallow, bowl-like contraption filled with gently pulsing moss. Veyla had explained that this moss helped filter out the worst toxins, enabling him to rest. He found the glow oddly soothing, a quiet guardian warding off the lethal atmosphere. His dreams were fitful, haunted by disjointed visions of Malachar's towering form. He saw an armored behemoth, wreathed in black smoke, with a face etched by jagged lines of molten metal. It strode across the land, flattening forests with a casual sweep of massive limbs. He heard the cries of the Shidine and the howling wind of a devastated biosphere. Then, a burst of white light banished the gloom, and he saw himself standing beside Veyla, both of them reaching out to the great tree, drawing on an energy that bound flesh and spirit. He woke with a jolt, drenched in sweat, the flickering moss pulsing softly at his side. Morning arrived with a peculiar hush. The village stirred slowly, as if anticipating a momentous day. Orion found Veyla outside, sharpening her blade. The metal glinted in the early light. She acknowledged him with a slight bow. You did not sleep well, I think. The dreams, did they come to you? Her golden eyes flicked with concern. He rubbed his face, nodding. Visions of Malachar. Destruction, chaos, but also a glimmer of hope. Strange, how vivid it all felt. She exhaled, sheathing her blade. Our bond might share more than breath, Orion Kane. It might share nightmares. She gave him a faint smile that softened her stern features. "We ride for the crash site soon. Are you ready?" He patted his makeshift bandages, testing his range of motion. His ribs still ached, but he could move. "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied. They set out with a small escort of Shydine warriors, each bearing a unique assortment of organic metallic weapons. Some carried staves inlaid with glowing lines, while others wore gauntlets bristling with needle-like spikes that pulsed with hidden power. As they left the village, Orion stared in wonder at the thick jungle, which pulsed with life at every turn. The canopy overhead was so dense it felt like twilight, and the air shimmered with drifting motes of luminescent dust. Veyla explained that the jungle was not naturally so dark. Ages ago, the Shydine had coaxed these towering plants to grow in ways that provided them with a natural fortress against predators. Predator species, she added grimly, that had once threatened their very survival. Now, the greatest threat was not from the local fauna, but from ancient shadows beneath the planet's crust. Eventually, they arrived at the site of Orion's crash. He braced himself, fearing the worst, but the wreck of the Ardent Dawn remained partially intact, embedded in the torn soil. Smoke still rose from a few scorched sections, though the fires had burned themselves out. Twisted metal jutted in all directions, the hull a labyrinth of melted plating and broken machinery. Drawing a deep breath, Orion motioned to Veyla. "I need to find the comm array, the emergency beacon. Maybe the power core if it's still stable enough to extract." Together, they picked their way through the wreckage, stepping over jagged edges. Shydine warriors stood guard, scanning the shadows as if expecting some prowling beast to leap forth. Inside what remained of the cockpit, Orion felt a pang of sorrow. The console screens were shattered beyond repair, and the entire forward section had been compressed like an accordion. Hope flared when he spotted a sealed compartment near the back of the cockpit, still locked. With Veyla's help, he pried it open to reveal an emergency kit, a handheld distress beacon, a compact plasma pistol, some rations, and a small portable generator. His heart soared with relief, though the beacon's display flickered ominously. He crouched, pulling off the beacon's casing. The internal power cell was cracked, likely from the crash or the subsequent explosions. With a determined grunt, he reached for the portable generator. "If I can rig an external power feed, maybe we can boost the signal and send an SOS," he muttered. "But I'll need to get this to higher ground or rig a makeshift antenna." Veyla observed him with a thoughtful expression. "We have spires near the sacred caverns, tall rock formations that protrude above the canopy. If you climb one with your device, it may help send your cry to the stars." Orion nodded. It was a plan, albeit a risky one. Climbing a rock spire in this environment, while injured, was not ideal. Still, if he wanted any chance of rescue or reinforcements, he had to try. He slung the gear over his shoulder, grimacing at the pull on his bruised ribs. "Let's see if we can salvage anything else," he said, glancing around. The once proud starship had been reduced to little more than scrap metal and memories. In a compartment near the rear cargo hold, he found an engineering tool kit, battered but usable. He also discovered a partially functional exosuit limb, which might be repurposed. Summoning the little strength he had, Orion dragged these items outside. One of the Shydine warriors, a hulking figure with tattoos shimmering across his arms, offered to help carry the heavier pieces. They spent the better part of the morning sorting through debris. Several times, Orion paused, feeling lightheaded in the poisonous air. Veyla placed a hand on his shoulder each time, seemingly transferring a slight tingle of energy that helped him regain his balance. "We share breath," she reminded him softly. "You do not stand alone in this." Her words comforted him more than he expected. Just as they finished gathering what they could, a rustling in the nearby underbrush set the warriors on alert. Orion grabbed his plasma pistol, scanning for signs of movement. The rustling grew louder, and then a monstrous shape emerged, a reptilian creature the size of a small shuttle, its scaled hide studded with bioluminescent fungi. It roared, revealing dagger-like teeth dripping with some foul-smelling ichor. The Shydine formed a protective semicircle around Orion, leveling their weapons. The monstrous creature lunged, snapping its jaws at the nearest warrior. The man rolled aside with a grace that belied his towering stature. Another warrior unleashed a beam of crackling green energy from his staff, searing the beast's flank. It howled, flailing in pain. Veyla sprang into action, her curved blade gleaming. She dodged the creature's sweeping tail, slicing at its scaled side with remarkable speed. The blade left trails of shimmering sparks, as if it were charged with some form of energy. Meanwhile, Orion gritted his teeth and fired his plasma pistol, scoring a direct hit on the creature's shoulder. Steam rose from the wound, and the beast jerked back, clearly weakened but still dangerous. With a feral cry, Veyla leapt onto the creature's back, driving her blade into the thick hide. The beast thrashed, trying to dislodge her, but she clung to it with astonishing agility. Another warrior distracted it by darting close, jabbing at the exposed underbelly with a glowing spear. Seizing the moment, Orion fired another plasma bolt, this time striking near the creature's eye. It roared in agony, stumbling. Veyla yanked her blade free, and a spray of luminescent blood spattered across the mossy ground. Finally, the beast let out a final groan and collapsed. Panting, Orion watched as the warriors methodically checked to ensure the creature was truly dead. Veyla jumped down, her chest heaving, and fixed Orion with a resolute gaze. We must remain vigilant. The deeper we go, the more beasts and worse we may find. Malakar's stirring might rouse many ancient terrors. He wiped sweat from his brow, nodding in grim agreement. With the salvage in hand, they returned to the village, the massive carcass of the slain beast left behind for the jungle to reclaim. Back at the Shydine settlement, Orion spent days tinkering with the salvage parts. He set up a makeshift workshop in one corner of the village, using a flat, sturdy root as his workbench. Shydine onlookers hovered, fascinated by his tools and methods. He explained as best he could, though Veyla's translations sometimes faltered on technical terms. During the nights, Orion continued to have intense dreams of Malakar, each vision more vivid than the last. In some, he watched entire forests shatter under the machine's relentless stride. In others, he saw the great tree's luminous heart flicker and fade. Yet always, there was a spark of defiance, a sense that he and Veyla, together, held the key to turning the tide. Meanwhile, his bond with Veyla deepened in unexpected ways. She often trained him in the use of Shydine blades and staves, showing him how to move with the fluid grace her people excelled at. Though he lacked their natural agility, he found that he could anticipate her movements, as if glimpses of her intent flickered at the edges of his consciousness. She, in turn, asked countless questions about the stars beyond their world, about starships, alien races, and the countless wonders spread across the galaxy. Their worlds, so different, seemed to merge in their shared breath, forging a connection stronger than either had anticipated. One evening, as they rested beneath the gently pulsing heart of Ihira, Orion found the courage to ask about the bond. This sharing breath, does it mean we are connected physically, spiritually? I feel something shift in me when you are near, like a resonance I can't explain. Veyla nodded, her features illuminated by the soft glow overhead. Among the Shydine, we believe breath is life's essence. Sharing it creates a link that defies distance, a bond that shapes destinies. In our legends, such a bond has only existed between mated warriors, or in the direst circumstances when life hangs in the balance. She paused, searching his face. We do not know what it means that you, an outsider, could share it with me. A flutter of uncertainty stirred in Orion's chest. He considered how, in saving her, he might have triggered an ancient cultural rite without fully comprehending its implications. Are we bound in a way your people would see as, well, you know? He hesitated, uncertain how to phrase the question delicately. Her lips curved into a gentle smile. Bound, yes. As for the rest, we must discover it ourselves. The bond does not force the heart, Orion. It only opens paths. She took his hand, and an electric tingle coursed through him, reminiscent of that moment when he fought to save her from the falling debris. A sense of peace washed over him, and they sat together in silence, letting the quiet speak. Days of preparation led to a final plan. The elders insisted that Orion and Veyla travel to the sacred caverns, hidden deep beneath the great tree's roots. Ancient records indicated that Malakar was sealed within a labyrinth of metallic structures far below, remnants of a time when interstellar visitors colonized the planet. The Shydine had taken root in the upper layers, forging a new life in harmony with the local ecosystem, while the deeper levels were gradually forgotten, except in prophecy. Orion's first objective was to find a vantage point high enough to broadcast a rescue signal. The second was to locate Malakar's prison and discover whether the mechanical beast had truly awakened. If it had, they would need to find a means to stop it. The elders offered guidance in the form of carved tablets, glyphs that indicated a potential weakness in Malakar's design, something called the neural nexus. Veyla's small squad of elite warriors volunteered to accompany them. They outfitted themselves with advanced staves, resonant blades, and small pulse bombs that glowed with captured energy from the heart of Ihira. Orion, wearing a scavenged exosuit arm braced over his battered ribs, tested the newly rigged distress beacon. He was as ready as he could be, given the circumstances. The journey took them first to the spires Veyla had mentioned, a rugged outcropping of rock that towered above the canopy. Ascending its steep face was grueling. Even the Shydine, who were at home in trees and vines, struggled with the slippery, moss-covered surfaces. Orion's arms shook with fatigue as he hauled himself up, cursing under his breath each time his battered ribs protested. Veyla climbed near him, lending support when he faltered. At last, they reached a narrow plateau near the summit. From there, the view was breathtaking. The jungle spread in every direction, an emerald sea under a hazy magenta sky. The Shydine village was barely visible, a cluster of lights hidden beneath the canopy. Orion wasted no time setting up the beacon. He lashed the external power feed to a stable rock formation, praying it would hold. Then, carefully, he boosted the generator's output. The device sparked to life with a hopeful beep. "Let's see if that's enough," he murmured, adjusting the frequency. He punched in a repeating SOS in Standard Galactic, stating his name, coordinates, and the nature of his emergency. He stood back, exhaling. If luck was on his side, a passing ship, or perhaps an Alliance patrol, might pick it up. Still, in the back of his mind, he braced for disappointment. The galaxy was vast, and the local interference from cosmic anomalies might scramble his signal beyond recognition. Veyla touched his shoulder. "You have done what you can, Orion Kane. Now, we must descend to the caverns." He nodded, leaving the beacon behind to continuously broadcast. With any fortune, rescue would come. But until then, he had a new task, saving this world, and possibly others, from a slumbering horror. The entrance to the sacred caverns lay within a colossal hollow at the base of the great tree, partially hidden by dense vines. Shydine lore claimed this was once a control station for an ancient starship that merged with the planet eons ago, eventually sprouting into the living structure that sustained the Shydine. Whether or not that story was literal, Orion could not say, but he was about to find out. As the group descended through twisting tunnels, the environment changed. Instead of soil and roots, the walls gradually became metallic, as though an immense steel skeleton lay beneath the living tree. Strange lights flickered beneath the surfaces, lines of energy pulsing in rhythmic patterns. At times, Orion caught glimpses of mechanical conduits, centuries old, humming in the darkness. Their path was lit by floating orbs of bioluminescent algae, which the Shydine carried in delicate baskets. The air grew heavier, charged with static electricity. Orion felt his hair stand on end, as though the planet's electromagnetic field was intensifying. Veyla walked beside him, her posture tense, muscles coiled for any sign of danger. At a fork in the tunnels, the group halted. The ground trembled, and an eerie wail echoed through the metal corridors. One warrior raised his staff, sending out a probing beam of light. The corridor ahead opened into a wide chamber, its walls lined with rows of cylindrical pods, each the size of a human. Orion's breath caught at the sight. Inside many of these pods were the remains of alien creatures, some partly mechanical. They looked long dead, their bodies mummified and fused with wires. A sense of dread gripped him. "What happened here?" he whispered, stepping closer. The remains wore strange suits, some resembling archaic spacefarer gear, others more heavily augmented with mechanical implants. Veyla shook her head sadly. "The ancient stories say our forebears were not alone when they came here. Some believed they could perfect themselves by merging with machines. They lost their way, becoming twisted puppets, servants to Malachar. A faint hiss interrupted them as one of the pods near the back flickered, releasing a jet of pent-up gas. With a clank, the lid unsealed. Orion and the warriors raised their weapons in unison. The occupant, a heavily augmented alien skeleton, slumped forward, then collapsed into dust and fragments of circuitry. An unsettling silence followed, punctuated only by Orion's rapid heartbeat. They pressed on, passing through the chamber of pods into a long corridor that curved downward. The rhythmic throb of an unknown power source became more pronounced. Occasionally, sparks danced across metal plates in the floor. Then, the corridor ended at a massive sealed door, engraved with a symbol reminiscent of the Shidine's swirling tattoos, but circled by an angular design that looked distinctly mechanical. One of the elders who had accompanied them, an older warrior named Tyvok, stepped forward, tracing the symbol with his fingers. His eyes glowed in concentration, and the door emitted a hum of recognition. It slid open, revealing a vast, domed chamber lit by ghostly green lights. Orion's eyes widened. In the center stood a gargantuan figure, easily 50 feet tall, shrouded by scaffolding and cables. Its humanoid silhouette was unmistakably metallic, with broad shoulders and a towering helm. Dimly lit power conduits snaked across its chest and arms. Though dormant, it radiated a palpable aura of menace. "Malachar," Veyla whispered. Her hand tightened on Orion's arm. The sound of the name echoed in the chamber as though the metal giant could hear them. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then a clang shattered the silence. One of the cables twitched, sparking with new energy. A faint red glow flickered in Malachar's ocular sockets, like slumbering embers stirring to life. The Shidine warriors moved as one, forming a defensive line. Orion stepped forward, scanning the massive machine with a mixture of awe and dread. He spotted multiple layers of armor plating, small hatches that might house weapons, and a gaping cavity in the chest that throbbed with faint light, perhaps the neural nexus mentioned in the glyphs. Suddenly, a piercing voice echoed in Orion's mind, a disembodied presence that felt cold and foreign. "Intruders detected. Sequence initiated." He reeled, clutching his temples. The same voice must have affected the Shidine, for they gasped and staggered. One warrior collapsed, blood trickling from his nose. Malachar's eyes blazed brighter. With a thunderous groan, it began to shift, metal limbs scraping against ancient scaffolding. Dust rained down in thick clouds. Veyla darted forward, brandishing a spherical device that glowed with captured Ihira energy. She hurled it at Malachar's knee joint. The sphere struck home, releasing a burst of green-white light that corroded a section of the armor plating. Malachar roared, a metallic bellow that rattled the chamber. Tyvok and the other warriors joined the assault, flinging pulse bombs and unleashing energy beams. Orion raised his plasma pistol, but the size of the mech made the weapon seem pitiful. Still, he aimed for gaps in the armor, focusing on the place where Veyla had torn open the plating. Each shot flared against metal, leaving scorch marks. Malachar swung a massive arm downward, smashing a section of the floor and narrowly missing the warriors. The impact sent tremors rippling through the chamber, toppling several members of the group. Panting, Orion realized they needed to get inside that chest cavity, the neural nexus. If they could disrupt or destroy it, maybe Malachar would power down for good. But how to reach it? The machine stood like a moving fortress, cables and scaffolding arrayed around it. Then Orion spotted a twisted ramp of metal leading to a platform near Malachar's waist. If they could climb there, they might have a chance. He locked eyes with Veyla, gesturing urgently. She nodded, sprinting ahead of him. The rest of the warriors provided covering fire, distracting Malachar. The monstrous mech twisted, swatting at them with a giant hand. One warrior was flung across the chamber, slamming into a wall with a sickening thud. Orion's stomach churned, but he forced himself onward, adrenaline fueling his every step. Reaching the makeshift ramp, Orion scrambled up, feet slipping on rusted beams. Veyla moved with more grace, pulling him forward whenever he lagged. Midway up, Malachar detected their movement. The machine's head pivoted, eyes burning. A mechanical shriek tore through the air. A row of gun ports slid open along its forearm, revealing spitting turrets that fired crackling energy bolts. Sparks rained around Orion and Veyla, and she hissed, ducking behind a girder. "Go," she yelled above the roar, tossing him a pulse bomb. "I will keep it busy. You must reach the Nexus." But he protested. She cut him off, her expression fierce. "We share breath, Orion Kane. We fight together. Now move." Steeling himself, Orion sprinted across the creaking metal platform. Each step jarred his battered ribs, but fear and determination kept him going. Malakar's giant arms swept in again, smashing the ramp behind him, leaving him clinging to a narrow ledge of scaffold. Ahead, he saw an opening in Malakar's torso, sparks dancing in the darkness within. Below him, Veyla launched herself from a platform, driving her blade into Malakar's midsection. She clung there, sparks erupting around the entry wound. Malakar let out another deafening roar, thrashing and trying to dislodge her. Her bravery gave Orion the moment he needed. He leapt the final gap, landing awkwardly near the open cavity. Inside, a pulsing sphere of red energy swirled behind layers of mechanical filaments. Wires coiled like serpents around a crystalline core, which glowed with a sinister brightness. The neural nexus. Taking a deep breath, Orion hurled the pulse bomb at it. The device latched onto the wires, releasing its stored charge in a violent flash. For an instant, he thought it might work. The glow sputtered, flickering. But then, a surge of energy coursed through the wires, sending a jolt that knocked Orion backward, nearly off the scaffolding. Malakar bellowed, and Orion saw the sphere blaze brighter. A wave of mental force slammed into him. He cried out, feeling as though his mind was being ripped apart. Darkness threatened to consume him. Then, a familiar warmth cut through the agony, Veyla's presence. Her voice echoed in his head. "We share breath. Do not yield." Gasping, he fought to focus. If a single bomb was not enough, perhaps he needed direct contact. Scrabbling for another pulse device, he found only one left. With shaking fingers, he keyed the device to overload, a dangerously unstable setting that would unleash all its energy at once, enough to destroy anything within range, including him. "No other way," he muttered. Steadying himself, he crawled into the gaping hole of Malakar's chest, ignoring the wires that snapped at his arms like hungry eels. The swirling sphere of energy loomed before him. He felt waves of hatred pouring from it, an ancient malice that transcended logic. Summoning every ounce of courage, he pressed the bomb to the sphere's surface. The wires lashed at him, digging into his suit. He could hardly breathe, his vision narrowing. At the critical moment, Orion felt Veyla's hand on his shoulder. She was there, inside the chest cavity with him, pushing aside the flailing wires with her blade. Without hesitation, she placed her own hand over his, the bond between them igniting in a surge of electric warmth. A faint glow radiated from both their chests, as though they indeed shared not just breath, but life. "Now," she commanded. Orion triggered the overload. A white-hot flash erupted, followed by a thunderous detonation that swallowed the entire chamber in sound and fury. Silence. A profound, ringing silence. Orion lay on his back, staring at a flickering overhead light. Smoke and dust clogged the air. He coughed, struggling to sit up. Distantly, he realized that the massive form of Malakar had collapsed, partially caved in on itself. A gaping hole in its chest still glowed with residual energy, but the malignant red glow was gone. His limbs shook, and his ears rang from the blast. But then he felt a reassuring presence. Veyla. She was sprawled beside him, breathing heavily, but alive. Relief washed over him like a tidal wave. He reached out, lacing his fingers with hers. Their eyes met, and they shared a moment of silent gratitude that neither of them had perished in the attempt. Around them, Shidine warriors approached warily, stepping over twisted metal. One by one, they realized that Malakar no longer moved, no longer roared, its hateful presence extinguished. A collective exhalation of triumph spread through the group. Tyvok knelt beside them, pressing a hand to each of their foreheads in a gesture of blessing. "You have done what our ancestors believed impossible," he murmured, voice trembling with emotion. "The great tree is safe. The planet is safe." Orion managed a smile, though his lip was split and bleeding. "Happy to help," he rasped. Veyla laughed, a sound bright with relief. They rested, patching their wounds, as the glow of the dead machine's circuits faded to darkness. In time, they made their way back up through the twisting corridors, battered but victorious. Word of Malakar's defeat traveled fast. When they emerged into the Shydine village, cheers and cries of celebration erupted from every platform and walkway. The elders burned ceremonial incense, while children danced among the glowing vines. At the heart of the village, the luminous orb representing Ihira pulsed more brightly than ever, as if sharing in the victory. Veyla and Orion found themselves guided to a high balcony overlooking the jubilant crowd. The same elder who had placed the metal circlet on Orion's head before did so again, but this time, the circlet felt lighter, as though it had been cleansed of dread. "Our greatest threat has been vanquished," the elder declared to the gathering. "By the courage of the war leader Veyla and the sky dweller Orion Kane, who share breath and destiny." The crowd erupted in a resonant cheer, the sound echoing through the canopy. Orion felt both overwhelmed and humbled by the adulation. He caught Veyla's eye, and they exchanged a smile. She took his hand, and a hush fell over the assembly. Leaning in, she spoke just loud enough for the crowd and Orion to hear. "We are free now to shape our future. Will you remain with us, or must you return to the stars?" Before Orion could answer, a new sound broke the hush, a distant crackle of static, followed by a faint beep. He realized it was coming from his portable comm device. He scrambled to retrieve it, heart pounding. A burst of garbled words came through, then coalesced into a recognizable voice. "Tane Orion Kane, this is the starship Aurora's Pride. We received your distress signal. We are in orbit and have launched a rescue shuttle. Please respond." A wave of mixed emotions swept over him. He was rescued. Someone had heard the beacon. At the same time, he felt a pang of sadness that he would soon leave this world and the people who had embraced him in their time of need. He glanced at Veyla, who gazed back with something like acceptance in her golden eyes. She gave the faintest nod, as though acknowledging that his path might lead elsewhere. He pressed the transmit button. "This is Captain Orion Kane. Your signal is received. I am safe, with assistance from the local inhabitants. Stand by for landing coordinates." The cheer from the Shydine warriors rose again, this time in excitement at the confirmation that the dreaded Malakar was not only vanquished, but that new allies from the stars were on the way. The next day, Aurora's Pride hovered in the sky above the village, its shuttle descending through the thick canopy with cautious skill. The Shydine marveled at the sight of an actual starship, some shading their eyes, others whooping in amazement as the thrusters displaced swirling leaves. Orion, accompanied by Veyla, led the greeting party. The shuttle landed on a makeshift clearing, and the hatch hissed open, revealing a small group of uniformed humans who stepped out, scanning the area warily. Orion approached, grinning despite the pang in his chest. He saluted a tall officer who wore the insignia of a rescue squad commander. "Welcome to our new friend's world," he said, gesturing toward the Shydine. The officer's expression flickered from surprise to relief. They shook hands, exchanging hurried introductions. Medical personnel rushed forward, scanning Orion, checking his condition. He waved them off as politely as possible, indicating he owed everything to the advanced healing rites of the Shydine. Veyla watched from a step behind, alert but calm. She seemed to sense that Orion's people were not a threat. Still, her posture remained that of a warrior, proud yet ready to defend. The humans marveled at the towering, blue-skinned Shydine, awed by their grace and the living architecture around them. Orion felt proud, in a way, to witness this bridging of worlds. In the ensuing conversations, a plan emerged. Aurora's Pride could help the Shydine remove the remains of Malakar from the sacred caverns, ensuring no chance of reactivation. The starship's medical labs might also analyze the planet's toxins to create a more permanent solution for Orion, or any future visitors, so that they could breathe comfortably without requiring the same bond. The Shydine elders, in turn, expressed willingness to share some of their technology, particularly the synergy of organic and metallic engineering that had shaped their civilization. New horizons of trade and cultural exchange seemed possible. Standing by the shuttle, Orion took Veyla's hands in his. "I have a duty to my people, Veyla, but I can't simply leave. I feel incomplete at the thought of never seeing you, never walking under this canopy again." The words caught in his throat. Their bond, forged by that desperate act of shared breath, had grown into something far deeper. Her eyes shone with a soft, golden warmth. The great tree welcomes all who come in peace. Your sky roads are open to us now, and we to you. Return when you can, or we will visit the stars together someday. She hesitated, then leaned in, pressing her forehead to his in a tender gesture. Our bond is not broken by distance, Orion Kane. Wherever we walk, we share breath. He closed his eyes, savoring that moment. The rescue team bustled around them, preparing for departure. Some Shydine were already in discussions with the starship officers, planning how best to dismantle Malakar's remains. The future seemed bright, filled with possibilities that no one had considered mere weeks ago. As Orion stepped onto the shuttle's ramp, he paused, turning back to wave at Veyla. She stood among her warriors, a regal figure in the dappled sunlight filtering through the jungle canopy. Though she wore the mantle of war leader, her stance was free from the weight of fear that had once haunted her. Their shared triumph over Malakar had unshackled her people from an ancient nightmare. In his mind, Orion felt the gentle echo of her presence, a breath shared across the void, a promise that transcended words. Smiling, he lifted off with the shuttle, leaving behind a world forever changed, just as he, too, was forever changed. And far below, the Shydine would carry on, safeguarding their great tree, forging new alliances, and cherishing the memory of the sky-farer who became one of their own. As for Captain Orion Kane, he left with more than a rescue. He carried a new sense of purpose, and the spark of a bond that tied two distant species together in hope. Perhaps that was the happiest ending of all, a future where the stars would witness both humans and Shydine, side by side, forging their destinies in unity. Epilogue. Weeks later, Aurora's Pride hovered in low orbit over the jungle planet, coordinating the final stages of removing Malakar's inert form from the sacred caverns. Scientists from Orion's homeworld marveled at the discovery of a living planet that had intertwined with an ancient starship, forming the Great Tree. The Shydine walked among the visiting scientists without fear, teaching them how to cultivate the luminous vines and harness the planet's energies in harmony with nature. On the day the last piece of Malakar's husk was lifted into orbit for safe disposal in a stellar furnace, a small ceremony took place at the foot of the Great Tree. Captain Orion Kane, fully recovered and breathing comfortably in an environment newly adapted by the Shydine's toxin-filtering flora, stood side by side with Veyla and the elders. The bond they shared still thrummed in the background of his thoughts, a quiet testament to that desperate, life-giving moment. After the ceremony, Orion prepared to depart once more. He planned to return soon, not out of obligation but out of desire. The Shydine had become part of his story, and he a part of theirs. As he boarded the shuttle, Veyla grasped his hand in farewell, her voice sure and steady. The stars are vast, Orion Kane, but they cannot keep us apart forever. He smiled, pressing his forehead to hers. Until we share breath again. The shuttle doors closed, and the vessel ascended through the canopy. Orion gazed down at the jungle world receding below. In a galaxy rife with peril, he knew there were always battles to fight, mysteries to unravel. But for now, there was peace. And that, he realized, was indeed a very happy ending, full of promise for adventures yet to come.